Sometimes we find ourselves learning how to live with life we've never would have chosen, and we're still finding a way how to love, hope, and even show up. When we lose someone we love, the world around us often wants us to know when we're going to be okay again. But my guest today understands that grief doesn't work that way. I'm Lisa Kelly, a workplace grief coach and host of Griefspace, where we talk honestly about what happens when grief changes our lives and we're still expected to show up. And today I'm honored to have Arik Housley with me. On November 7, 2018, Arik's 18-year-old daughter, Alaina, was murdered. The mass shooting at Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California, along with 11 other people. But today, I don't want you to know about Alaina only through the tragedy of how she died. I want you to know Alaina through the love of her father, Arik, co founder of Elena's Voice Foundation, a public speaker on grief, resilience, and communication, and the author of the book Always November Lessons in Love, Loss, and Resilience. Eric's work shows us that it's possible to move forward while carrying the love, the loss, and the life that changed forever. And Eric, I'm so glad you're here. I want to begin with getting to know about Elena. What do you
Mhm.
want people to know about your daughter that maybe they wouldn't learn from the headlines or the news?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me about the work that I do, and I just say, "Gosh, is this so you can have people know who she was and know her name?" And I never have really thought of it in that fashion. Now, she'll live with my wife and I and my son. She'll live with us forever. The people that she was in their lives, she touched their lives in a different way. And I hear that, like a lot from people. Oh, they were so kind. They were this, they were that, in terms of their loved one. And we believed that too, but it wasn't until her memorial where kids stood up that said I was struggling on campus, I didn't have any friends, and she just plopped down next to me and said, "Hi, I'm Alaina," and they introduced herself and says, "Come hang out with my friends." And the next thing they know, they were all like, there was this group of best friends that some of them were, just nerds that just didn't have anybody to hang out with, but she was the outgoing one at first. And when we were down at Pepperdine, somebody reached out and gave me a similar story. She's like, I was my third week of school. I was really struggling. I was at the Starbucks. I didn't know anybody. I was by myself. And she just sat down and introduced herself. And then it was a week later that the murder happened. So she's like, I just really wanted to reach out to you and tell you how much that meant to me. And so because they were all so different, to see that she was just such an embracer, a person that can really bring that community together. It was really one of those things that's kind of resonated for us.
It was such a tragic situation, Eric, and I'm so sorry for your loss. What
Thank
do you
you.
remember about those first days and maybe even weeks after Elena died?
I mean, it's, as you probably know, like, it's a fog for a little while. When you're kind of trying to navigate it, some of the best advice we got was, don't worry about tomorrow or next week. Just, if you need to eat, eat. If you need to sleep, sleep. If you want to go for a walk, go for it. Don't worry about, next month's rent or whatever. Like, all that stuff will find its way through. You end up kind of stressing about things that you can't really control and they don't help you. I'm a firm believer, you really have to feel grief. And sadly, what comes with it is that's that feeling of love that's lost, or the love that is and was present before and still can remain. But I would say, when you're in that, you're just not really knowing where to go, what to do. And so allowing people to show you love and embrace you, to support, to drop off food. And it was hard at first because I'm like, we're fine. We're fine. We don't need help. We're like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And that strength doesn't need to be the repellent of everything else. Right. But this was me. Once my brother kind of suggested, hey, they want to do this for you, let them. Then that was me allowing people in. And that was probably one of the keys to moving forward with the grief, not moving on, but moving forward specifically.
Yeah, it's their way of grieving too and showing you how they care.
Yeah.
It's always a very uncomfortable situation. And how do we support the people around us who are going through a loss? And we've learned that community, it's mostly about food and bringing food.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I'm convinced 100% of the people want to say the right thing, and
Mhm.
80% of them don't, and that's okay. Like, it's better to say something than nothing, in my opinion, because like, we had people literally walking down an aisle that we'd known forever at Target and look up, make eye contact, drop their head, and walk a different
Oh,
direction.
that hurt.
Yeah, that really made us feel very isolated in that way. But I tell people all the time, I talk about it in my public speaking, of kind of the what to say when you don't know what to say.
Mhm,
And I give the example of, take a strong Christian woman that just lost their child,
mhm.
and you turn to her and say, I'm so sorry, she's with God now. Well, there's a lot of people that are at that stage of, hey, I was a good, faithful servant. I went to church. I did. Why my daughter? Why now? Why me? Why? Maybe in 2 years, that's exactly what she wants to hear. Maybe right now, that's exactly what she wants to hear. Most people say what they think they would want to hear.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's just not always the perfect thing to do. So I suggest to people all the time, less is more. Try to just say, hey, I'm so sorry. Lisa, I'm so sorry for your loss. And so some people want to hear the name, some don't. But if you don't do it right, that's okay. Just say, Lisa, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Like, if you did say, I'm so sorry, she's with God now, and you're like, well, what do you mean I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you and would love to buy you a coffee sometime, or sit with you if you ever want to sit
Right.
and talk about it. Because I found myself consoling others more than them consoling me.
Of course. Sure. Sure. And we need to teach people how to console us, and we need to speak up, like you said.
Right. Yeah, set your own boundaries.
Mhm.
I'll give an example. Is a friend lost her daughter tragically in an incident, like a traffic accident. She was an off-duty officer, and when she was helping a drunk driver that caused a big collision pull him out to get him safely, another drunk driver hit them both and killed them. And so when I asked her originally, I said, what happened in the accident? She said, it wasn't an accident. It was an incident. He caused this. And I said, I apologize. I will refer to it
Mhm.
as an incident going forward. And she goes, thank you. And we moved on. It's respecting those boundaries, that if you need to say it, like if you were to say to me, Eric, please say David's name, please say John's name, whatever that might
Right.
be. Okay, I will. Every time I see you,
Right.
I'd like to know more. Tell me a funny story about him when you're ready.
Right.
I'd like to hear a funny story about John when you're ready. So it's respecting and listening to people, because we all do this different.
Start with that general statement, I'm sorry, and let their response be your guide to your next step.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Eric, did you find that people wanted to fix something that couldn't be fixed in some sort of a way? The world expects us to eventually get back to normal after a loss, and sometimes that can be in the form of they offering a way to fix it, or advice for you to fix it.
So when I spoke at the Parents of Murdered Children's conference, I mean, I'm sitting in a room with 300 other families that have lost people to tragic incidents. And I said, look, I'm going to talk to you about forgiveness. And there's no way that some of you might be in that space, and you may never be in that space. And that's okay. I'm just going to tell you that I forgave the shooter, not for him, but for me. I didn't want to carry him for the rest of my life. Right.
Mhm.
So I say that because I'm not trying to fix it for them. I want them to understand my perspective of it. And if that helps them, great. And if that also makes them go, yeah, that's not where I'm at right now. One woman looked at me and she says, the murder of my son is still unsolved. There's no person to blame. And so how do I forgive? And I said, again, I'm sorry, I can't give you that. I'm just telling you that hopefully someday you have that opportunity to choose to forgive, and what that might look like for you. But yeah, there's definitely those people in those modes that I can see try to do certain things. I just think it's nice to let them try to help. Usually it's because they want to. There were some people that did some amazing stuff for us that I didn't expect. Like, we were given a lot of artwork. Like, literally, we could have filled our entire house. And my
Really?
wife had looked at me about a week later and said, Eric, our son doesn't deserve to live in the shadow of his dead sister. And so he needs to live his life and be a teenager. He was 14 at the time. And I said, Hannah, we could fill every room of our house with paintings and pictures and stuff that people gave us. We didn't want to turn this into a shrine. So then a friend reached out randomly and said, Is there anything I can do? And usually I tell people, be specific, like, hey, can I bring you dinner tonight? Or can we go for a walk when you're feeling up to it? Or, be very specific, because in the beginning, you really don't know what you need. And so Hannah randomly looked at this friend and says, there's a bunch of art and stuff here that we can't keep forever. We don't have space for this. Can you just handle it?
Right.
And she was like, done. And that was amazing. I was like, this is perfect. Thank you so much.
That's a great way to help somebody out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen closely if you're dealing with somebody who's grieving. Listen, be a good listener and take those cues from the person who is grieving.
Yeah. Yeah,
You,
for sure.
you talked about forgiveness a few
Mhm.
minutes ago, Eric. What would you say to someone who's grieving and angry with God?
We all have a different grief journey. And in my opinion, we're all on a faith journey. I used to think faith and religion were the same. Now I know that while they're correlated, they're also very different. Faith is believing, right? You have faith in your relationship, you have faith in universe, God, Christ, whatever that looks like for each person. And so I believe we're all on our own journey. I don't believe it's our job to judge when we get there, and that we just have to try to treat others with kindness and respect and help leave this world a little bit better place than what we found it. And when I say that, I look at forgiveness and I don't remember the name of the shooter. We really never had any interest in any of the details. None of that changed the outcome that Alaina was one of the victims. I know enough details. I mean, I could look back and say, gosh, why didn't the police see this guy ahead of time? Why didn't they go in and arrest him? There was never any grounds for them to be able to really do that. He was a problem, a disturbance of the peace, PTSD veteran, and I'll say this is part of the problem with our system is in high school, from what I understand, he attempted to sexually assault his high school gym teacher. And so back in, as you know, when we were growing up, the thought was, hey, this kid needs to get straightened up. He needs to go in the military, right? So now we send him in there, teach him how to kill people. And if
Yeah.
something's psychologically wrong, after they go out and do this, they come back and then they're told, hey, go ahead and work at your minimum wage job. And they're going through a lot. They say what they need to do to get out of the VA system, and then they don't have the mental health support. And then they're not making enough money. They feel underappreciated. They feel hopeless and helpless. And next thing they know, they're getting a gun and they're well trained on how to do it. And they've got access, much of our country, to get them fairly easily and to go out and do something like this. So for me, I look and say, look, Timothy McVeigh didn't need a gun to kill 250 people at the Oklahoma Federal Building. He filled his car with fertilizer. That's just hate. And so to me, we have to find ways for forgiveness. And I would hope that we could start to teach our children younger. Like, this isn't going to change with your and my generation. Like, this takes the younger generation to choose kindness, to choose compassion and empathy, and how they teach that. I don't know if you're familiar with Scarlett Lewis' work with the Choose Love movement. She lost her son Jesse in the Sandy Hook shooting.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, and Scarlett's doing some amazing work to really teach people, like, there are four major pillars that we can change this, because empathy and compassion and kindness and things of the sort are going to be what really change the future. So to me, to look at forgiveness was a piece that came in my faith journey, to know that I'm going to see her again. There's been enough things that have happened that know I will see my daughter again, things that I was not sure of before.
Right.
And I looked at people. I used to say, well, if people look at me and question it, how am I going to prove that I'm right? And now I look at it and I go, I don't need to prove anything
Wow.
to them. If I tell somebody, I say, look, if you see butterflies and that reminds you of your mother, and somebody says, well, that's not real, and I look and I go, but if you see butterflies and it reminds you of your mother and it makes you smile, who cares? You don't need their permission, right?
What does it matter in the long run? Who's right and
Right.
who's wrong? Would you agree that forgiveness, I should say, is a continual process rather than a finite one and done? Eric?
I think so. I mean, it's easy to go and look to blame someone. Like, I need someone to blame for what happened to my daughter nearly 8 years ago. But in the end, none of that blame changes what's happened, right? I mean, I've got friends who've lost someone to a drunk driver, and you could look at it and go, I could be angry at that person for the rest of my life, or I could forgive them because they're having to live with this as well. And I think that partly comes with faith, like knowing I will see her again, that our time here is very finite. It's kind of like the waves of grief, right? It'll still come in moments. Once you've gotten to the point of forgiveness, if you've truly forgiven, then I would say that it wouldn't be a long process. Like once it's there, it's there. And I'll describe it this way. My wife still goes to therapy 7 years later, 7.5 years later, and it's not always about Alaina. It's probably about things that I do to annoy her or her workplace or whatever, right? That's what therapists are there for. And I went 5 or 6 times, and I needed to know that I wasn't going to go back through the stages of grief. So we pretty much skipped the stages. And I don't know if it's the grace of God or what that on why that was, but we got the call. We pretty much knew, like that second we knew. And while we were in sorrow, we were in immediate acceptance. Like every minute that passed was just confirmation that she was one of the victims.
Mm,
And I look at it and say, gosh, other than his embrace of putting his arms and just wrapping his arms around us, how else could this be? And so we didn't go through denial or anger or any of that.
yeah. I like to think of the stages of grief more as characteristics of grief. And not only that, as a non exhaustive list of the characteristics of grief,
Right,
because we don't always cycle through all of them. We don't
right,
experience any of them sometimes. One of
right.
them that I'd like to add to it, if there were stages of grief that would accept the word resilience to it, I'd like to add that. What does resilience mean to you, Eric? It was a part of the title of your book, so that's why I'm
Yeah, yeah. Where I would differ from you as one of the characteristics of grief is not everybody gets there, right?
right.
Even though there's a point where you should try, because there's people still, 25 years later, 30 years later, still in the stages of grief. And that's what I needed to hear from my therapist was I was like, okay, so am I going to go back? Am I going to all of a sudden be really angry
Uh,
6 months from now?
right.
And he said, once you're at acceptance, you don't really go back through. You could be angry about other stuff, but you're in that actual loss of your daughter, you're at acceptance. You're not in denial or anger and that kind of stuff. He said, now it's hard to say because if the shooter hadn't taken his own life and you had to keep going back for all of the parole hearings or something, maybe that anger would reignite. Who knows? For me, resilience is understanding that we can move forward. We'll never move on, right? We will never move on without them. They're a part of our story, and we all have a story. We all have people in our life that we've lost. We are all one day closer to our last day. And the way I describe it is I have a beach ball. I have this beach ball that I've been dealt that I don't want, but I have it. And it's not so heavy that I can't carry it. But if I try to push this under the water while I'm in the ocean, it's more muscle and effort to do it. And you lose your balance and boom, it pops back out and there it is. It's not a medicine ball or a bowling ball that's too heavy to carry that you'll drop over time. I mean, you can carry this. You might be able to let a little air out of it at one point or even whatever the scenario is or shrink the size of it. But really, I have this beach ball that I carry for the rest of my life. And I think that's the understanding of resilience is I'm
Mm,
carrying this and I'm going to carry it for the rest of my life. And I'm going to appreciate that I feel so blessed that I had Alaina for 18 years. As hard as that may seem, right?
right.
And some parents look at me like, how can you even say that? I'm like, well, because I'll take 18 years with Alaina than a lifetime with someone else. Like, it's not that it's awesome. I would never trade the time that I had.
Mm. It seems like resilience can coexist with falling apart, grieving.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Resilience doesn't mean tough. Resilience doesn't mean like stoic. Resilience means
Mhm.
like you know what, you get knocked down, you can get back up, and you can get back up and you pick the ball back up and you keep walking. And in grief, those waves hit and you get knocked down. Like you get knocked down frequently every year around that time of year. That's why the name Always November, because it happened November 7th. That every year, kind of end of October starts to roll around, and we get to that time of year, and my wife and I are like, we need to get away. Let's go to the ocean or the mountains or somewhere, like, because we feel that time of year coming. So Elena's birthday every year we get together. She loved meat, like beef. She loved dark chocolate. So we every year we get together and have like a prime rib and dark chocolate dessert of some sort. No candles. We don't, because we're like, she's not there to blow out the candles. So that's different for us. But we still get together and we enjoy each other's company and we tell funny stories, and we just get together and we laugh, we cry, and spend those moments. But that's that resiliency, right? To appreciate the time that we had while we had it.
You used the term growing bigger around grief. And what
Mhm.
does growing bigger around grief look like to you, Eric?
When I was 20, in my mid 20s, one of my dear friends, a friend from college, lost his wife to ovarian cancer. They'd only been married for a couple years. She had already been diagnosed when he decided to still propose because they were planning to get married anyway. She was awesome. She passed away when our mid 20s, 8 years of grief. And then the day after Elena's murder, he called me and said, "Hey, would you like to meet my son, Tasso?" He had met another woman of Greek descent, Diana. She's awesome. We'd been at their wedding. And so that morning, the morning after, Tasso's running around, and I look over at him. I go, Tasso's here because Tessie's not. And I said, because if Tessie would have lived, this little boy wouldn't have happened, because he was a creation of Diana and Billy, right? And I
Right.
said, that was the moment where I realized I don't understand everything that's happening here, whether that's faith, whether that's, whatever, whether that's science, however you want to look at it, is there's a lot we don't know. So when I talk about growing bigger, I look at it and say, when Tessie's funeral was, I was a mess, as many of us were. And I remember thinking, okay, you can't cry, you got to be strong, you got to be this, you got to be that. No, like, I mean, I grew bigger in knowing, look, I can sit with somebody when they've lost someone and
Yeah.
just say, how are you? How are you doing right now? Like, how are you feeling? Are you hungry? You want to talk about it? If you don't and you want to watch a movie, fine. Like, don't force it, right? Like, just sit with them. I mean, sometimes that might be literally sitting down next to them and doing nothing. Just sit with them and let them know that you're by their side. And I'll give you this example. I love this one. A dear friend of mine lost her husband very quickly to cancer. She said, a person texts me and says, I'm out at your curb. I'm in my car. I have my laptop and my phone. I've got work to do, so you don't have to worry about me. However, if you'd like me to come in and do your dishes, if you'd like me to mow the lawn, go for a walk, if you want to chat, great. If not, know I'm close and that I love you. And I was like, that is just like the coolest message ever, that you've got that comfort blanket, but you're not cold, so you can throw it off, right? But it's at the
Yeah.
foot of your bed kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And I really, really appreciated that, because that was a moment for me to go, like, that's a way to really tell somebody, like, look, if you want to sit there, I'll sit there. You don't have to say anything. If
Yeah.
you want to, if you want to talk, if you want me to shut up, just tell me to shut up and I'll sit there and you can talk. But again, like you said earlier, it's listening. It's listening to what they need in the moment.
Mhm. That was such a neat gift to give somebody, and to know that you're not going to be a burden to somebody because she's already there, you know?
Right.
She's already there, you didn't impose on her schedule or anything, she was
Right.
available. Just
And
be
if,
available.
yeah, and if she's at a point that she needed space and didn't want somebody there was no, yeah, she was not imposing where she was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll give you uncomfortable. I call it awkward hugs. I was in a grocery store. I saw a woman that I'd known for years, but I never really spoke to her much, maybe once or twice for 30 seconds. And we had a 20-minute conversation. This was me consoling her, but she was like, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And so after about 20 minutes, I said, I got to cook dinner for the family tonight. So I got to get ready to run, but it was really good seeing you. Of course, I was consoling her in that way. And then she says, "Oh, can I have a hug?" And I'm like, "Okay." Like, I've become a hugger. Because that's kind of what happens, even if you weren't before. And I said, "Yeah, of course." And so I give her a hug and she hugs me, and then I let go and she doesn't let go. And I'm like, "Okay." And I sit there. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what is happening right now that, when you're consoling these people, she needed that. I didn't need that. Right. And that's the moment when you go like, look, you can be there and you can be there for that person. And if they don't need it, don't take offense to it. If you show up with food, if I showed up, Lisa, at your door and dropped off food, and you looked at me and said, "Eric, or whoever answered, we have so much food, we're throwing everything away." My response would either be, "Happy to give you this," and you throw it away if you don't eat it, or if you want a different food. And I'm also happy to take it. Like, I just wanted you to know I was thinking of you, right? You then leave. If not, it's like you turn and the next time you see me, you're like, "Thank you for coming by." Like, you see, I showed up, right? And me, I can't take personally. Literally, I mean, there was a point here at my house because we had 20 people here. Somebody dropped off 50 breakfast burritos. Okay. They were huge. So everybody was eating like a half of them. On the third day, where we still had 32 breakfast burritos, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want a 4-day-old breakfast burrito. Can we please get rid of these?" It was awesome that they brought them by. It worked out great because there were so many people here. But there was a point was like 50 might have been a lot. But even if it was, I was like, that was pretty cool. Like, so it's okay. There's no intention to get the proportions right. Even if they're gluten free and you dropped it off, just if they tell you, go, "You know what, next time I will make sure this is gluten free. You let me know the day and I'm here."
Yeah, and just to know and recognize that these are the way people grieve too. The people around you are grieving with you and for you, and also they're grieving the loss sometimes too, and that those kind acts of service help them. So be careful
Yeah.
how we respond to the
Well,
gifts we're given.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, even of the 12 families from Borderline, like, we all did this very different. There's some that are extremely angry, rightfully so, that are, interested in gun reform. And again, that's not wrong. This is how they've chosen to do it and how we've chosen to do it. So
So
when you've got somebody in your life, how are they choosing and how do you navigate that line? I think you nailed it originally, Lisa, when you said listening, listening and paying attention.
mm. I work with people who are grieving, but they still have to show up to work because I am a workplace grief coach. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, you've spoken about communicating around grief personally and maybe even the workplace.
Mhm.
Eric, if you were an employer or a coworker of somebody, what could you possibly misunderstand about grief, about your grieving coworker?
It's funny. I am an employer and I have done the wrong thing. A year or so before, Alaina, my bookkeeper for years, lost her son, and I didn't know what to say. And I was trying to be very kind because it was a couple weeks after, and we still have a small business to run. And I'm thinking, okay, do I need to cover longer, which is okay, but I need you to tell me what you need, right? Because I was like, look, if you need more time off, that's fine. I'm going to need to get somebody to help fill in because I'm covering and now we're spread too thin. And I just needed to wrap my head around, is this a week? Is this 6 months? Right. So I can figure out what I'm going to do. So there was plenty of times where I've said the wrong thing. My suggestion with people in the workplace is be careful with the privacy versus isolation divide. Now, I say that because a friend of mine, she lost her husband to cancer. Her daughter, I coached in soccer. She was on Elena's soccer team. And I saw her about 2 months ago. Tracy said to me, I go, "How did it go for you?" And she goes, "My brother assumed we wanted privacy. So he said, hey, they just need some time. They need some space and privacy right now." So her two best friends and their kids, who were all like, they were all really close. The two best friends kind of said, okay, we'll give them privacy. We don't know, like, we're trying to respect that.
Mhm.
She said, Eric, for 2 weeks, she goes, I don't think I bathed maybe once in 2 weeks. My two boys were really struggling similarly because they were watching me. We were all really in a tough place. My daughter, on the other hand, was like, I want to go to practice. I want to see my friends. I need to get out of the house because it's so, different. Now, these are four people going through the exact same tragedy, right? And grief. The point was she said after 2 weeks the two friends showed up at the door and they're like, we're sorry, it's been 2 weeks, we had to come see you. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she goes, that's where I turned the corner, because I was so isolated and alone and depressed and in this dark place. I was struggling. And she said them showing up was what helped get me out of that depression. And she's a very positive person by nature, so she had gone down this road unintentionally because her brother was trying to protect her. So, getting back to your original question, is in the workplace, most people are afraid to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing. And so it's like you show up to work, and I don't even want to say good morning, Lisa, because I'm afraid to say good morning because you might not be just morning or
Mhm.
hello, and they walk and you're like, okay, that's, you've never said hello, like you don't say hello like that, so now you're feeling like you're being treated differently,
Right.
right? Show up and go, Lisa, I brought you a coffee today, I was thinking about you. If it's the wrong one, tell me, I will drop you off the right coffee order tomorrow, but I wanted you to know I was thinking
Mhm.
about you. And if you're like, I don't drink regular milk, I need a oat milk, I'll be like, no problem, tomorrow, oat milk latte. Those are just those moments that you're like, oh, that was nice. It was nice of him to just drop that off for me. I don't need another latte. I've had three and I'm going to get the jitters, whatever. It doesn't matter. You showed up. Or, happy to bring you one tomorrow if you're up for it. Or, if you want to go for a walk, or when you're ready and you want to tell me a funny story about John, please do so. Like, I'd love to hear it. I want to hear something that makes you smile, that reminds you of him. And you can usually tell if that person's like, I don't really, and then you
Yeah.
back off,
Right. Right.
but I think most of the time people appreciate when you're there and you're present.
Mm. Just acknowledging that the person is going through a difficult time, acknowledging the loss, they have to acknowledge it, and it really helps when the people around them are acknowledging it. One thing I tell leaders and managers is to tell the person who's returned to work after a loss that I'm going to check in on you periodically, or I'm going to check on you every Friday or at least once a week, so that they know to expect a check-in, and that the check-in is simply, "I care, and how are you doing, and how can I make it easier on you,
Mhm.
or how can we make
Mhm.
this possible? What do we need to shift temporarily?" They're not threatened by it. It just is a nice way to show that you care, and there's nothing to
Yeah.
worry about. You're safe here while you're grieving.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I suggest to people, be specific. So, Lisa, how, instead of how are you feeling or how are you doing, I like to say, how are you doing right now?
Yeah,
Like,
today.
be very specific. How are
Right.
you doing this morning?
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're like, how are you doing? Every day is a lot. It's
Depends.
still a fog. But if you're like, how are you doing this morning? Well,
Mhm.
I got here. Okay, that's a positive. Like, and you don't want to become that toxic positivity.
Oh, no.
A friend of mine, the ones that did Elena's memorial for us, lost their daughter 9 months later in a tragic accident. She was 7 and she'd been at our house the week before. And he worked for a big communications company. And he said, Eric, what was pretty awesome was about 2 months after Addie's death, I show up to our annual conference. There's over 1,000 people there. And the CEO came up to me and said, Jason, I'd love to take you and let's go grab a coffee if you've got a couple minutes. And he's like, of course, what am I supposed to say to the CEO? So he
Yeah.
goes, I went with him and he just said, I'm just so sorry for your loss. Would you like to talk about it? Like, would you like to talk about, or tell me a little bit about Addie? And he goes, and I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? The CEO of a big company is coming up to me. And he said, in the next year, he came to me again and did it. So I think it's just showing up and doing it. And it's okay. If I were to say, Lisa, tell me something about John, if you're like, you know what, you didn't know John, I don't really feel comfortable, and just say, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I just wanted you to know I was thinking of you. I know how grief feels. I never tell people I know how you feel, because I don't know how you feel. I know how it feels, but I'd be happy to, if you ever want to talk or something, I'm happy to sit with you.
What a
So even if their response is, you didn't know John, and I've heard that you didn't know my daughter, so why are
Mhm.
you saying you miss her? Blah blah blah. Well, I just wanted you to know we were thinking of you. And then even if it was awkward, it's okay. Like they're navigating this as well. Don't take it personally. They still know you showed up. You know.
what great workplace culture that creates when leaders check in like that. And believe
Yeah.
me, word gets around from employee to employee, and that's just developing a healthy workplace culture. 15-second question, interaction, and
Right.
there you go. It wasn't that hard.
Right. For
You
sure.
know, I think of Elena's death and how it led to the creation of Elena's voice. Why was kindness such an important part of that foundation's mission that you created?
We originally said we don't want the foundation to do what other nonprofits are already doing. Let's fill a gap that's missing. So what we found was mental health services for people that did not have access. And specifically we found victims of violence falling through the cracks. And then now we've kicked off with violent offenders. Our My intention is, if today's offended are most likely tomorrow's offenders, how do we change that trajectory? So how can we take David, who just, hit his wife, da 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 da, whatever the scenario is. I'm not saying any of this is okay, but
Right,
he's not a 30-year hardened criminal, but he's somebody that's just lost his job financially, whatever, drinking, drugs that got him on a wrong path. Can we get him back on the right path or on a path that's more healthy? And doing that, the children will see, the wife will see that people can change, right? Because most of these kids who grow up to be, let's just say, out of statistical reasons, that a young man who's 8 watches his dad beat his mom, then he turns and goes, well, when he's 20 some odd and he's frustrated in the relationship, typically that's when the assumption of this is how it works, because they don't know different, right? They don't know what it's like. If you don't grow up in a religious household, you don't understand what it is to have religion in your household. If you don't grow up with family dinners every night where we sit down and talk to each other because everybody's in different places or on their gaming systems or whatever, that's all you know, right?
right,
It's not until you go to a different home or a different place and see it. For us, we looked at it and said, if we can change the trajectory of the violent offender as well as support the people who have been hurt, that's where we do it. And it came out because when we looked at the mission and the vision, we said, what are the characteristics of Alaina? So for scholarships, it's music, education, sport, and community service. So those are things that we do it. We have a writing prompt that's based on her last writing prompt that we actually got, understanding the difference between occupation and a mission for someone. Like understanding the difference of why you want to become a doctor. Do you want to become a doctor because you're a doctor and it's the status, or do you want to do it because you want to change the world? You want to help people, right?
yeah.
So we do that for the scholarships, and then the other piece, and much of it came around. The kindness piece came around when we were interviewed at stuff. People were like, in one word, how would you describe Alaina? And Hannah immediately just says kind. Like she just was, she was so kind to people. You could never really hear a bad word coming out of her mouth towards others. And so that's how it all started.
Elena's voice, your foundation, that will be linked in the show notes. It's part of your website. Your book also is going to be linked in the show notes. Arik, the book is called Always November, and it alludes to the fact that loss is always present and that grief comes in waves. You've got the book right there.
Yeah.
Grief comes in
I got an
waves.
Indie award.
Mm.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I think ultimately the book, I've gotten really good reviews on it. I was struggling to write it because I was trying to write a book. And the woman that helped me write it, Holly Lynn Payne, said, Eric, stop trying to write a book and just tell me stories. You're a storyteller. And so we did that. And she helped me weave them together to make sense, because I was trying to do it chronological. And it's when you're trying to tell things about Alaina when she was alive, but it starts out with her murder. Well, you're already off of chronology, right? So
Right.
it was understanding how to do it. And I've had some really good reviews on, I laughed, I cried. Like, it's a father being vulnerable, telling funny stories, telling real stories about my relationship with my wife, getting a tattoo, like things that really make people understand how to communicate around grief and how it can be awkward, but that communication's the key.
And grief has no expiration date. The cliche is true. It's
Yeah.
always November. It's always going to be a part of your life. It won't always take over every day. Maybe one day you might have a day that it does take over your day. And then your resilience kicks in and you are on another trajectory the next day. Arik, what are some ways you still celebrate her? You do have her birthday and you do her prime rib and something dark chocolate. You have definitely that foundation and written a book. Are there any other ways you still celebrate her?
I feel her presence with me every day. And that's just how I try to keep carrying myself to help others and help communities around me.
Our conversation today reflected so many aspects of grief that are going to be helpful to the listeners. If I were to close this conversation, Arik, with one question is what do you know about grief that you desperately wish you knew before the accident happened or the incident happened on November 8th, 2018?
I really encourage people is look, no day is promised. And every day is such a gift to us because we're all one day closer to our last day. So Lisa, if you have a sibling that you got into it with and you guys, like you just haven't reconciled, does it really matter? If your father passed away right now and you just haven't talked to him because he's been stubborn about blah, 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 you look and go like,
Right.
was it really worth it? Did it really
Yeah.
matter if I was right or he was right or whatever? So
Right.
the loved ones, the people that are around you, the people that you respect that are kind to you, let them know because you just never know what that does to change their day and how that little ripple in the pond, right? If you can throw in the
Mhm.
pebble. So that would be my suggestion. I do speaking workshops, you name it. If I can help, I'm helping communities. That's what makes me feel fulfilled in doing it. So, yeah, through either on LinkedIn, Arik Housley, it's ARIKHOUSLEY, or at my website, which is myname.com, are the two ways. And they're both pretty easy. I'm the one that answers all of it. I don't have a team of people. That's the easiest way for people to get a hold of me. If I can help, I do preventative work, like to talk to communities before to say, hey, how do we talk about this stuff? Especially now, sadly, that there's shootings in our country, like most recently at Virginia State. But then I also do post work as well, going in and getting people to talk about things. Some people don't want to talk to a therapist, but if they talk to somebody that's lived experience, they're willing to say something or they're willing to have those conversations. And so that's where I try to help out wherever I can.
Amazing. You are a busy man owning a business, busy with soccer and dealing with
Yeah.
people who have lost a loved one and just trying to give them some help through your speaking and through your book. All of that, all of your contact info is going to be linked in the show notes. And people, if you have suffered a loss, waiting to get help can actually set you back. You don't need to attempt this on your own. Let's connect with me or Arik. My information is also in the show notes, and I can help you become the boss of your loss. Take care.